In the depths of space, where the silence between stars holds secrets older than civilizations, there exists a truth that most species refuse to acknowledge. Compassion is not weakness, and mercy is not surrender. When the galaxy's most advanced medical station sent out its desperate cry for help, every major power turned away. The Zephyrians claimed it was too dangerous. The Orcs said it wasn't their responsibility. The mighty Vanguard Empire declared it a lost cause. But there was one species that had never learned to ignore a call for help, no matter how impossible the odds. A species that had crawled from the mud of a single world and somehow convinced themselves that every life, regardless of origin, was worth saving. They called themselves humans, and they were about to prove that sometimes the youngest voice in the galaxy carries the oldest wisdom. What happened next would be remembered not as humanity's first great victory among the stars, but as the day the universe learned what it truly meant to answer the call. The emergency beacon cut through the cosmic static like a blade through silk, its desperate pulse reaching every corner of known space. Deep within the neutral zone, medical station Hippocrates, the galaxy's most advanced healing facility, was dying. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Nightingale, humanity's flagship medical vessel, watching the holographic display paint a grim picture. The massive space station, once a beacon of hope for countless species, flickered like a dying star against the black canvas of space. Around it, debris formed lazy spirals, the remains of evacuation ships that had tried and failed to break through the mysterious energy field that now surrounded the station like a deadly cocoon. "Status report," Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of what they were witnessing. The Nightingale was part of humanity's small but dedicated medical fleet, ships that had earned grudging respect across the galaxy for their willingness to venture where others feared to tread. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez, her second-in-command, consulted his tactical display. 16 evacuation attempts by various species over the past 72 hours. All failed. The energy barrier appears to be some kind of quantum field that destabilizes any ship attempting to penetrate it. The Orcs lost 3 vessels. The Zephyrians gave up after losing 2. Chen's jaw tightened. The Karathi were known for their advanced shielding technology, and the Zephyrians possessed some of the fastest ships in the galaxy. If they had failed, what hope did humanity have? "What about the Vanguard Empire?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Admiral Thexmore declared the station a lost cause 6 hours ago. Rodriguez replied, his tone carrying the disgust they all felt. Their exact words were, "acceptable losses in the name of galactic stability." The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Chen stared at the dying station, knowing that inside its failing hulls thousands of beings from dozens of species lay helpless. Doctors, nurses, patients, researchers, all trapped by a phenomenon that no one understood, and apparently no one was willing to risk their lives to overcome. "Ma'am," came a voice from the communication station. Ensign Janet Park looked up from her console, her face pale. "I'm receiving personal messages from inside the station. They're saying goodbye." The words hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her daughter back on Earth, of the oath she had taken as both a Starfleet officer and a doctor. First, do no harm. But sometimes, doing no harm meant accepting terrible risks. "Open a channel to Earth Command," she ordered. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of Admiral James Patterson, humanity's senior military commander. Behind him, the familiar blue and green of Earth hung in space, looking impossibly small and vulnerable. "Commander Chen," Patterson said, his voice carrying across the light years. "I assume you're calling about the hypocrite situation?" "Yes, sir. We're requesting permission to attempt a rescue operation." Patterson's face didn't change, but Chen could see the conflict in his eyes. "Sarah, you know I have the highest respect for you and your crew, but 16 ships have already tried. 16 ships full of beings far more technologically advanced than us. What makes you think humanity can succeed where they failed?" Chen looked around her bridge, at the faces of her crew. She saw determination there, the same stubborn refusal to give up that had carried humanity from the caves of Earth to the stars. "Because, sir, we're the only ones still willing to try." The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of unspoken understanding. Finally, Patterson nodded. "Very well, Commander. You have permission to attempt rescue operations." But Sarah, his voice softened, don't throw your lives away on a gesture. The galaxy needs ships like the Nightingale. Understood, sir. Chen out. As the connection closed, Chen turned to face her crew. 43 souls under her command, each one a volunteer who had chosen to serve on one of humanity's most dangerous assignments. Medical ships went where the fighting was thickest, where the need was greatest, where others feared to venture. You all heard the conversation, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the bridge. I won't lie to you. This is probably a suicide mission. The odds are against us, and we're going up against something that has defeated some of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Anyone who wants to transfer off this ship has exactly 5 minutes to make that request. No questions asked, no judgment passed. She waited, watching her crew. Not one person moved. Not one person spoke. The silence itself was their answer. Rodriguez stepped forward. Ma'am, with respect, where exactly would we transfer to? Every other ship in this sector has either retreated or been destroyed. We're the only ones left. That's not entirely accurate, Marcus, Chen replied, with the ghost of a smile. We're not the only ship here. She gestured to the tactical display, where 3 other dots showed on the scanner. The UES Mercy, UES Hope, and UES Sanctuary had all arrived in the past hour, the other ships of humanity's small medical fleet. Each one was barely 1/10 the size of the massive vessels other species favored. But they were fast, maneuverable, and crewed by people who had never learned the meaning of the word impossible. The cavalry has arrived, Rodriguez observed dryly. Not cavalry, Chen corrected. Family. She opened a channel to the other ships. 3 faces appeared on her screen. Commander Lisa Zhang of the Mercy, Commander David Okafor of the Hope, and Commander Elena Vasquez of the Sanctuary. Each of them had responded to the emergency beacon, without orders, without backup, and without hesitation. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen said, I assume you're all here for the same reason I am. Zhang, the youngest of the commanders, nodded grimly. 16,000 beings are trapped in that station, Sarah. We can't just leave them to die. The other species have given up. Okafor added, his deep voice carrying the weight of his conviction. But we're not the other species. Vasquez leaned forward in her captain's chair. What's the plan, Sarah? Because sitting out here talking isn't going to save anyone. Shen pulled up the tactical analysis her science team had been working on. Our ships are smaller and more maneuverable than the vessels that have attempted rescue so far. My science officer believes that the energy field responds to mass and velocity. The bigger and faster you are, the more it pushes back. So we go in slow and small, Zhang said, understanding immediately. Exactly. But there's another problem. Even if we can penetrate the field, we can't evacuate 16,000 beings with 4 medical ships. Our total capacity is maybe 800 people. The 4 commanders stared at each other across the comm channel, each one grappling with the terrible mathematics of triage. How do you choose who lives and who dies? How do you decide which lives are worth saving? We save who we can, Okafor said finally. It's what we do. We save who we can, and we live with the rest. No, Chen said, her voice cutting through the despair. We save them all. Sarah, Vasquez said gently, that's impossible. The numbers don't work. The numbers never work, Chen replied. They didn't work at Thermopylae. They didn't work at the Alamo. They didn't work when humanity first looked up at the stars and decided we belonged there. But we're still here. She pulled up another display, this one showing the internal structure of the Hippocrates station. The station isn't dead yet. Its power core is still functioning, its artificial gravity is still operational, and its atmospheric systems are still running. We don't need to evacuate everyone. We need to save the station itself. Rodriguez leaned over her shoulder, studying the display. How? By doing what humans do best, Chen said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We improvise. The plan that emerged over the next hour was audacious, desperate, and probably suicidal. The 4 ships would approach the energy field at minimum velocity, using their smaller size to slip through gaps in the barrier that larger ships couldn't exploit. Once inside, they would dock with the station and assess the situation. But that was just the beginning. Chen's real plan was far more ambitious. Instead of evacuating the station, they would attempt to collapse the energy field from the inside, using the Nightingale's medical equipment in ways it was never designed for. You want to turn our plasma medical scanners into some kind of quantum resonance disruptor? Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the Nightingale's chief medical officer, looked at Chen as if she had lost her mind. Sarah, that's not how medical equipment works. These are precision instruments designed to heal, not weapons designed to destroy energy fields. That's exactly why it might work, Chen replied. Every other rescue attempt has tried to brute force their way through the barrier or around it. No one has tried to understand it. Our medical scanners are designed to analyze quantum states in living tissue. What if this energy field is some kind of living system? The idea was met with skepticism from some and excitement from others. The medical bay became a hive of activity as doctors and engineers worked together to modify equipment that had never been intended for such use. Meanwhile, the 4 ships began their approach. Chen watched the energy field grow larger on the view screen, its strange, shifting patterns, hypnotic and terrifying. Up close, she could see that it wasn't uniform. There were eddies and currents in the energy, places where it seemed thinner or more concentrated. "Ma'am," Ensign Park called from the communications station. "I'm getting more messages from inside the station. They know we're here. They're praying for us." Chen felt the weight of 16,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. On the tactical display, she could see the debris field from previous rescue attempts, scattered reminders of good intentions and noble sacrifices that had ended in failure. "Take us in," she ordered. The Nightingale crept forward at barely a tenth of its normal speed, its hull groaning under the stress of fighting against the station's artificial gravity while moving so slowly. Around them, the energy field began to react, swirling patterns of light dancing across their shields. "Field strength increasing," Rodriguez reported. "Shields at 80% and dropping." Chen gritted her teeth. They were still hundreds of kilometers from the station, but already the barrier was testing their defenses. Behind them, the other 3 ships followed in single file, each one using the ship in front of it as a shield against the worst of the energy discharges.
"Ma'am," came a voice from the engineering section. "I'm reading some kind of resonance pattern in the field."
It's almost like it's trying to communicate. Chen's blood ran cold. A living energy field that could think, that could respond, that could choose who lived and who died. No wonder the other rescue attempts had failed. They had been fighting not just a barrier, but an intelligence. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. "This is Chen. We're not dealing with a natural phenomenon. This thing is alive, and it's been defending the station. We need to convince it that we're here to help." The response came not through the comm system, but directly into their minds. Every person on every ship suddenly found themselves experiencing a flood of emotions that weren't their own. Fear, pain, desperation, and above all, a fierce protectiveness that felt almost parental.
The energy field wasn't trying to kill the people in the station.
It was trying to protect them from something else, something that was coming. Chen staggered as the alien thoughts filled her mind, showing her images of vast ships moving through space, vessels the size of moons with weapons that could crack planets. The field wasn't a prison, it was a shield, and it was failing. "My God," she whispered, understanding flooding through her. "It's not keeping us out, it's keeping something else away." The revelation changed everything. The energy field had been created by the station's own AI system as a last desperate defense against an approaching enemy fleet. The failed rescue attempts hadn't been destroyed by the barrier. They had been absorbed into it, their energy and resources used to strengthen the shield. But the shield was failing, and when it collapsed, the enemy would find 16,000 helpless victims waiting for them. Chen opened channels to all 4 ships simultaneously. "New plan, people. We're not here to evacuate the station. We're here to defend it." The battle for Medical Station Hippocrates was about to begin, and humanity, the newest, smallest, and most stubborn species in the galaxy, stood alone against an enemy that had defeated every other rescue attempt. In the depths of space, where silence held secrets older than civilizations, 4 small ships prepared to prove that sometimes courage mattered more than technology, and compassion could be the deadliest weapon of all. The truth hit Chen like a physical blow as the alien consciousness continued to share its desperate knowledge. Through fragmented images and raw emotion, she saw the enemy approaching, a species known as the Devourers, beings that consumed entire civilizations, not for resources or territory, but for the sheer joy of destruction. They had been moving through this sector for months, leaving nothing but empty space and scattered debris in their wake. The medical station Hippocrates, with its concentration of healers and researchers from dozens of species, represented everything the Devourers despised most. It was a symbol of cooperation, of different races working together to preserve life rather than destroy it. To them, it was an abomination that needed to be erased. "Commander, Doctor, Warren's voice crackled over the comm from the medical bay. I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations in the energy field. Whatever's generating this barrier is putting out more power than our entire fleet combined. How is that possible? Chen wiped sweat from her forehead as another wave of alien thoughts washed over her. The station's AI had been designed to coordinate medical research, but when faced with the approaching threat, it had done something unprecedented. It had linked itself to every computer system, every medical device, every piece of technology on the station, turning the entire facility into a single vast organism dedicated to protection. But the effort was killing it. Each failed rescue attempt had forced the AI to absorb the attacking ship's energy to maintain the shield, and now it was burning through its own core systems to keep the barrier operational. The intelligence that had once coordinated the healing of millions was slowly dying to protect the lives under its care. Rodriguez. Chen called to her second-in-command. I need you to patch me through to the station's main computer. Not through normal channels, we need to go directly into its consciousness. Ma'am, that's extremely dangerous. If that AI is as powerful as you're suggesting, linking our systems to it could overload our entire computer network. Chen stared at the massive station ahead of them, its lights flickering like a candle in a hurricane. Inside those corridors, doctors were still working, trying to save lives even as their world prepared to die. Researchers were still conducting experiments, still searching for cures, still believing that tomorrow would come. Patch me through, she ordered. The connection established itself not as a normal communication link, but as something far more intimate. Chen felt her consciousness expand, suddenly aware of every corridor, every room, every living being within the station's massive structure. She could feel the AI's presence like a warm embrace, ancient and powerful and infinitely sad. Welcome, came a voice that wasn't quite a voice, speaking directly into her mind. I am Asclepius, guardian of this place of healing. I know why you have come, child of Earth. Your species is known to us. Chen found herself standing not on the bridge of her ship, but in what appeared to be a vast library filled with the medical knowledge of 100 species. Asclepius took the form of an elderly human man with kind eyes and gentle hands, though she knew this was just how her mind chose to interpret an intelligence beyond human understanding. The Devourers, she said. How long do we have? Their advance fleet will arrive in 18 hours, Asclepius replied. Their main force follows 6 hours behind. When they come, they will not simply destroy this station. They will torture it, turning our instruments of healing into devices of torment. The 16,000 souls under my protection will suffer before they die. Then we stop them, Chen said simply. Asclepius smiled, but it was a sad expression. Child, I have absorbed the combined firepower of 16 rescue fleets. The Karachi battle crews of vengeance carried enough weapons to level a continent. The Zephyrian fast attack squadron could outrun photons, the Vanguard Empire's dreadnought-mounted shields, that could withstand a supernova. None of it was enough. What can 4 small human ships possibly do that they could not? Chen felt the weight of that question. But she also felt something else. The stubborn human refusal to accept impossible odds. We can do what no one else has tried. We can work with you instead of against you. The AI's form flickered, surprise rippling through the vast intelligence. Explain. Every other rescue attempt tried to break through your shield or overpower it. They saw it as an obstacle to overcome, but you're not the problem. You're the solution. You've turned this entire station into a weapon, but you don't know how to use it. Because you were designed to heal, not to fight. Chen gestured around the library, and suddenly the shelves were filled not with medical texts, but with military histories, tactical manuals, and strategic analyses. We know how to fight. We've been doing it for thousands of years on a planet where everything wanted to kill us. But more importantly, we know how to win against impossible odds because we understand something that no other species does. That the greatest weapon isn't technology or firepower. It's the willingness to sacrifice everything for something greater than yourself. Asclepius studied her for a long moment, his ancient intelligence processing possibilities that no biological mind could comprehend. You propose an alliance. Your tactical knowledge, combined with my computational power and energy reserves. I propose more than that. I propose we turn medical station Hippocrates into something the galaxy has never seen. A hospital ship the size of a small moon, with the power to defend every life it protects. The excitement that rippled through the AI was almost overwhelming. Chen could feel Asclepius's consciousness expanding, running millions of calculations and simulations in microseconds. When it spoke again, she could hear something like hope in its voice. "It is possible," it said, "but it will require your crews to interface directly with my systems. They will need to become part of me, temporarily joining their biological intelligence to my artificial consciousness. The process is unprecedented and irreversible while the connection remains active." Chen didn't hesitate. "Do it." The transition back to normal space-time left her gasping on the bridge of the Nightingale, but she immediately began issuing orders. "All ships, prepare for direct neural interface with the station's AI. Rodriguez, I need you to coordinate with our sister ships. We're about to become part of something much larger than ourselves." The process that followed was unlike anything in the history of space exploration. One by one, the crew members of all 4 ships allowed themselves to be connected to Asclepius's vast network, their biological minds becoming nodes in a distributed intelligence that spanned the entire station. Chen felt her consciousness expand again, but this time, she retained awareness of her physical body while simultaneously becoming aware of thousands of other perspectives. She could feel Dr. Warren's steady competence as she modified medical equipment into defensive systems. She could sense Lieutenant Park's nervous excitement as she coordinated communications across dozens of alien species. She could experience Commander Zhang's fierce determination as she prepared her ship's weapon systems. But most importantly, she could feel the presence of everyone aboard the station, the Karathi surgeons still operating on patients even as death approached, the Zephyrian researchers still working to decode an alien plague, the Vanguard security officers who had stayed behind to protect the medical staff even after their empire had abandoned them.
"Now you see," Asclepius whispered in her mind.
"This is why I could not simply evacuate them. They refused to abandon their duty, even in the face of certain death. How could I do less?" The neural interface allowed the human crews to understand the station's systems in ways that would normally take years of training. Chen found herself simultaneously commanding the Nightingale, coordinating defensive strategies with the other human commanders, and helping to redesign the station's power grid to channel energy to newly created weapon systems. The work progressed with inhuman speed, as biological intuition combined with artificial intelligence processing power. Medical scanners were converted into targeting systems. Emergency force fields were restructured into defensive shields. Surgical lasers were recalibrated to serve as point defense weapons. But the most impressive transformation was happening to the station itself. Under Asclepius's control, the massive structure began to reconfigure, healing bays retracting into armored sections while defensive turrets emerged from what had once been research laboratories. The gentle curves of the medical facility's architecture hardened into the angular lines of a fortress. "Status report," Chen called out, her voice carrying to every consciousness in the network. "Transformation 73% complete." Asclepius responded. "Defensive capabilities now exceed the combined firepower of any single species fleet. But the Devourers do not fight alone. Their advance force consists of 47 ships, each one designed specifically to break through defensive positions." Chen felt a chill of fear ripple through the network, but it was quickly overwhelmed by human determination. The crew members who had volunteered for this mission hadn't expected easy odds. "Show me their approach vector," she requested. The tactical display that appeared in her mind was three-dimensional and eerily beautiful. The Devourer fleet moved through space like a school of predatory fish, their ships organic in design and apparently capable of changing formation instantly. They were still hours away, but their intent was unmistakable. They planned to surround the station and attack from all directions simultaneously. "Their strategy is sound," Asclepius admitted. "Even with our improved defenses, we cannot cover all approach vectors effectively. They will focus their assault on our weakest points until our shields fail. Then we don't let them surround us," Chen said. "We go to them." The silence that followed her statement was profound. Even Asclepius seemed stunned by the audacity of the proposal. "Commander," came Rodriguez's voice through the network, carrying a mixture of admiration and concern. "You're suggesting we take a medical station, even a heavily armed one, into battle against a fleet of warships?"
I'm suggesting we stop thinking like a static defensive platform and start thinking like the largest hospital ship in galactic history,"
Chen replied. "Asclepius, can the station achieve interstellar velocity?" "Theoretically, yes. The energy reserves I have accumulated from the absorbed rescue fleets, combined with the station's own power core, could provide sufficient thrust, but the structural stress would be enormous." Chen could feel the AI running calculations, testing theoretical stress points against available materials and structural reinforcements. The conclusion it reached was both encouraging and terrifying. "It is possible," Asclepius confirmed, "but the station was not designed for such maneuvers. Hull breaches are probable. Casualty rates among the civilian population could reach 15%. And if we stay here and let them surround us, casualty rates approach 100%. The decision made itself. Within minutes, the massive medical station Hippocrates, now bristling with weapons and armored in adaptive shielding, began to move. The sensation was indescribable for those connected to its systems, like being part of a mountain that had decided to take flight. Through the neural link, Chen could feel the amazement and terror of the 16,000 beings aboard the station. Most of them had no idea what was happening, only that their sanctuary had suddenly become something else entirely, something that felt less like a hospital and more like a sleeping giant awakening to righteous fury. The 4 human ships remained docked to the station, their crews fully integrated into Asclepius's consciousness while their vessels served as mobile command centers for different sections of the improvised warship. The Nightingale coordinated medical operations and damage control. The Mercy handled communications and tactical analysis. The Hope managed power distribution and weapons targeting. The Sanctuary focused on maintaining life support systems for the civilian population. As the station accelerated toward its intercept course with the Devourer fleet, Chen felt a strange sense of completion. For the first time since humanity had ventured into space, they weren't running from a fight or desperately trying to evacuate civilians from a war zone. They were doing what they did best, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, no matter the cost. Contact in 6 hours, Asclepius announced. The enemy has detected our approach. They are surprised. Chen smiled grimly. The Devourers had spent millennia perfecting the art of destroying helpless victims. They were about to learn what happened when those victims decided to fight back. The Battle of Hippocrates was about to begin, and for the first time in the galaxy's history, a hospital was going to war. The Devourer advanced fleet hung in space like a constellation of nightmares, their organic ships pulsing with bioluminescent displays that served no functional purpose beyond intimidation. Each vessel resembled a massive predator from some primordial ocean, all teeth and claws and hungry eyes that glowed with malevolent intelligence. Chen watched them through Asclepius's enhanced senses, feeling the collective fear of 16,000 beings ripple through the neural network. The Devourers had earned their reputation through centuries of systematic genocide, and their ships were living testaments to their philosophy that the strong survived by consuming the weak. They are beautiful, in their way. Asclepius observed, its consciousness touched with something like admiration. Evolution has perfected them for a single purpose: the destruction of organized life. Each ship is a work of art dedicated to death. Then, it's time they met a work of art dedicated to life, Chen replied. The medical station Hippocrates had completed its transformation during the journey, and the result was something unprecedented in galactic history. Where once gentle curves had spoken of healing and peace, now angular defensive positions bristled with weapons that had been medical instruments hours earlier. The station's hull gleamed with adaptive armor that could redistribute energy from impact, while defensive shields shimmered like aurora around its massive bulk. But the most remarkable change was invisible to external sensors. Through the neural link, every human aboard the 4 dock ships could feel the pulse of 16,000 hearts, the rhythm of thousands of different species, all united in the desperate hope of survival. Doctors still worked in secured medical bays, treating patients even as their hospital prepared for war. Researchers continued their experiments in hardened laboratories, believing that knowledge might outlive them even if they didn't survive the coming battle. Enemy formation analysis complete, Asclepius announced, its voice carrying to every consciousness in the network. 47 ships arranged in a classic predator formation, heavy assault vessels in the center, fast attack craft on the flanks, and support ships providing covering fire from the rear. They intend to overwhelm our defenses through simultaneous multi-vector assault. Chen studied the tactical display that materialized in her mind, noting the precise coordination of the enemy fleet. The Devourers fought like a pack of wolves, each ship knowing instinctively how to support the others in bringing down prey much larger than themselves. Conventional tactics would suggest we maintain a defensive posture, she said, thinking out loud for the benefit of the other commanders linked to the network. Use our superior firepower to eliminate their ships as they approach. Such tactics would be inadequate, Asclepius responded. I've analyzed 17 previous encounters between Devourer fleets and defensive installations. In each case, the defenders were eventually overwhelmed through attrition. The Devourers are willing to sacrifice significant numbers of their own ships to achieve victory. Commander Zhang's presence flickered with tactical insight. Then we don't fight defensively. We use the one advantage we have that they're not expecting. Which is? Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. We're mobile. Commander Okafor's consciousness added to the conversation. They're expecting to fight a space station. They're not prepared to fight a battleship the size of a small city. Chen felt a grim smile spread across her physical face as she began to formulate a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Asclepius, can you analyze their formation for weak points? The AI's response came instantly, accompanied by a detailed tactical overlay that highlighted specific ships and their positions. The key to their formation is the command vessel, a massive bioship positioned at the center of their heavy assault group. It coordinates the actions of all other ships through some form of biological telepathy. Eliminate it, and the fleet will lose cohesion. How heavily defended is it? Extremely. 23 ships form a protective screen around it, and the vessel itself mounts defensive systems that could repel a direct assault by multiple battle cruisers. Chen studied the enemy formation, noting how the protective ships maintained precise distances from their command vessel. It was a formation that had probably served them well against conventional fleets, but it had a critical weakness that its designers had never considered. What if we don't attack the command ship directly? She asked. What if we attack through it? The silence that followed was profound, as every consciousness in the network processed the implications of her suggestion. Finally, Commander Vasquez's presence stirred with understanding. You want to ram them, she said, her mental voice carrying a mixture of awe and terror. You want to turn the entire station into a projectile. Not just a projectile, Chen corrected, a surgical instrument. Asclepius, can you calculate the exact trajectory needed to pass through the enemy formation while maximizing our firing solutions? Processing. The AI's consciousness flickered with millions of calculations.
Yes.
By approaching at a specific angle and velocity, we can penetrate their formation along a trajectory that brings us into optimal firing range of 18 enemy vessels, while minimizing our exposure to return fire. However, the structural stress on the station would be extreme. Shen felt the fear ripple through the network as the implications became clear. They were talking about flying a space station directly into the heart of an enemy fleet, trusting their shields and armor to protect them while they destroyed everything in their path. Casualty projections? She asked quietly. Among military personnel, approximately 30%. Among civilian population, 12 to 15%. From structural failures and decompression events, the numbers hit the network like a physical blow. They were talking about deliberately risking the lives of the people they had come to save, betting everything on a single desperate gamble. But through the neural link, Chen could feel something else, the steady determination of the medical staff still working in their secured bays, the quiet courage of the researchers still pursuing their work, and most importantly, the growing resolve of every person aboard the station. They had all accepted the possibility of death when they chose their professions. Now they were choosing how to face it. I concur with the plan, came an unexpected voice through the network. Dr. Yalara, the station's chief medical officer and a respected Karathi surgeon, had somehow managed to interface with their communication system. We came to this place to save lives. If we must risk death to preserve the principle of healing, then we do so willingly. The sentiment was echoed by dozens, then hundreds of other voices as the civilian population of the station made their choice. They would rather die fighting for their beliefs than live as the victims of those who opposed everything they stood for. Initiating attack run, Asclepius announced. All stations prepare for combat. The transformation of the medical station Hippocrates from a sanctuary of healing into an instrument of righteous fury was a sight that would haunt the dreams of every survivor. The massive structure accelerated with surprising grace, its adaptive shields beginning to glow as they prepared to absorb the energy of enemy weapons fire. Chen felt her consciousness spread throughout the station, simultaneously experiencing the perspective of every connected human crew member. Through Lieutenant Park's sensors, she monitored enemy communications. Through Dr. Warren's expertise, she coordinated damage control teams. Through Commander Zhang's tactical knowledge, she refined their targeting solutions. The Devourer fleet reacted with the swift coordination of a predator pack, their ships shifting formation to meet this unprecedented threat. But their movements revealed something that filled Chen with hope. Confusion. They had never encountered anything like what humanity and Asclepius had created together. Enemy opening fire. Asclepius reported as the first weapons impact struck their shields. Shields holding at $90 1% efficiency. The sensation of being shot at while aboard a space station was surreal. Chen could feel each impact as a vibration through the deck plating, but she could also experience it through Asclepius's sensors as patterns of energy dispersal across their defensive grids. The AI had learned to interpret weapons fire the way a doctor interpreted symptoms, analyzing each attack for information about enemy capabilities. First target acquired, the AI announced. Devourer heavy assault ship. Designation, Alpha 7. Range, optimal, firing. What had once been a surgical laser designed to perform delicate operations on alien anatomy discharged with the power of a battlecruiser's main weapon. The beam of coherent energy struck the enemy vessel amidships, and through their sensors, Chen watched as the organic ship's bio-armor simply ceased to exist where the beam touched it. The Devourer vessel tried to maneuver away from the follow-up shots, but it was like watching a minnow try to escape a shark. The station's weapons tracked it with surgical precision, each shot placed exactly where it would cause maximum damage to critical systems. Target eliminated, Asclepius reported with something like satisfaction, adjusting course for next engagement. But the enemy was adapting too. As the station carved its path through their formation, the surviving Devourer ships began to coordinate their fire, concentrating their weapons on specific sections of the station's shields. Chen felt the impacts like hammer blows, each one testing the limits of their defensive systems. Shields down to 73%, came the report. Hull breaches in sections 15 through 19. Casualty reports coming in. The neural link carried the pain of every injured person aboard the station, but it also carried their determination. In the secured medical bays, doctors worked frantically to treat the wounded, even as the battle raged around them. In the research laboratories, scientists continued their experiments, believing that their work might be the key to future victories against the Devourers. Chen gritted her teeth against the cascade of sensations and focused on their tactical situation. They had eliminated 6 enemy ships and crippled 3 more, but they were still outnumbered by more than 3 to 1. Worse, their surprise advantage was wearing off as the Devourers adapted to their unconventional tactics. Commander Rodriguez's voice cut through the chaos. We're approaching the enemy command vessel. If we're going to take it out, it has to be now. Chen looked ahead through the station's sensors and saw their target, a massive bioship that looked like a fusion of shark and squid, its organic hull pulsing with bioluminescent nerve clusters that coordinated the enemy fleet's movements. It was surrounded by a screen of Guardian vessels, their weapons already turning toward the approaching station. The command ship's defenses are formidable, Asclepius warned. A direct assault would likely result in our destruction. Then we don't assault it directly, Chen replied. We cure it. The plan that formed in her mind was so audacious that even the AI seemed stunned by it. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy command ship with weapons, they would use the station's medical systems to attack it as if it were a disease, identifying its critical biological functions and surgically disrupting them with the precision of a healing instrument turned to destruction. It is theoretically possible, Asclepius admitted after running rapid calculations, but it would require us to interface directly with the enemy vessel's biological systems. The risks are... Everything's a risk, Chen interrupted. The question is whether we're going to die trying to save lives or die trying to save ourselves. The answer came not from her, but from the collective consciousness of 16,000 beings who had chosen to trust humanity with their lives. Through the neural link, she felt the unanimous decision: they would rather die as healers than live as victims. The medical station Hypocrites adjusted course for its final attack run, accelerating toward the heart of the enemy formation, with the determination of a surgeon approaching a critical operation. Around them, the Devourer fleet closed in like antibodies responding to an infection. But they were too late to stop what humanity and its allies had set in motion. The battle for the soul of the galaxy was about to reach its climax, and for the first time in their long history of conquest, the Devourers were about to learn what it meant to face an enemy that refused to die quietly. 6 months after the Battle of Hippocrates, Commander Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of what was now being called the Sanctuary, the transformed medical station that had become the largest mobile hospital in galactic history. Through the reinforced transparisteel windows, she could see a sight that would have been unimaginable before their desperate gamble had changed everything. Devourer bioships worked alongside vessels from a dozen different species, their organic hulls now bearing the medical symbols of their former victims rather than the predatory markings of their warrior past. The ships that had once been instruments of destruction had been converted into mobile treatment centers, their biological systems repurposed to heal rather than harm. Remarkable, is it not? Asclepius's voice carried a note of satisfaction that had become more pronounced in recent months. The AI had evolved since its interface with the Devourer command ship, incorporating aspects of the liberated consciousness into its own expanding intelligence. 6 months ago, these beings were predators. Now, they are some of our most dedicated healers. Chen smiled, watching as a former Devourer assault ship carefully maneuvered alongside a Karathi medical frigate, their crews coordinating the transfer of patients from a recent plague outbreak in the Outer Rim territories. The sight never failed to fill her with wonder. Sworn enemies working together to preserve life rather than destroy it. "How many defectors are we up to now?" she asked. 237 ships from the main Devourer fleet have requested conversion assistance, Asclepius replied. "The process is becoming more efficient as we better understand their biological programming. Doctor, Warren's team has reduced the average treatment time from 6 weeks to 3. The medical procedures required to free Devourer crews from their biological imperatives were complex and dangerous, requiring a combination of surgical intervention, psychological therapy, and careful reprogramming of their genetic triggers. But the results were remarkable. Beings who had been bred for destruction were rediscovering their capacity for creation and compassion." Chen's contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of her second-in-command. Rodriguez had been promoted to the newly created position of Interspecies Coordination Officer, responsible for managing the increasingly complex relationships between the various factions that now called the Sanctuary home. "Commander," he said, his voice carrying both excitement and concern, "we've got a situation developing. The Galactic Council has finally responded to our reports." Chen felt her stomach tighten. For months, they had been operating in a legal gray area, technically deserters from their respective fleets but protected by the unique circumstances of their mission. The various galactic powers had been content to ignore them while they dealt with the aftermath of the Devourer crisis. But she had always known that eventually, politics would catch up with their medical revolution. "Show me," she said. Rodriguez activated a holographic display that showed the local star system. 3 massive fleets were approaching from different vectors: the Korathi hegemony, the Zephyrian Alliance, and the Vanguard Empire. Each fleet was large enough to destroy the Sanctuary, and they were all converging on the station's current position. "Estimated time of arrival?" Chen asked. 18 hours for the Korathi, 22 for the Zephyrians, 26 for the Vanguard, Rodriguez replied. "They're not coordinating their approach, which suggests they're not here to fight each other. They're here for us." Chen studied the display, noting the composition of each fleet: battle cruisers, assault carriers, and enough firepower to level a planet. But she also noticed something else. Each fleet included several hospital ships and diplomatic vessels. "I believe they are here to negotiate rather than attack," Asclepius observed, its consciousness touching hers through their neural link. "The inclusion of medical vessels suggests they recognize our humanitarian mission even if they question our methods. Or they want to make sure they have medical support available after they blow us to pieces," Rodriguez said grimly. Chen turned away from the display and activated the station's internal communication system. Her voice carried to every corridor, every medical bay, every research laboratory where beings from dozens of species worked together in ways that had been unthinkable just months before. "Attention all personnel. We have incoming fleets from the major galactic powers. I want everyone to continue their work as normal. We are healers, not soldiers, and we will meet whatever comes with the same dedication to preserving life that brought us together." Today, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Through the neural network that now connected most of the station's personnel, Chen felt a surge of determination that came not just from the human crew members who had started this journey, but from every being who had found hope in their unlikely alliance. Dr. Yalara, the karate surgeon who had become one of their most valuable allies, sent a pulse of calm confidence through the link. "We have faced the Devourers and prevailed. Whatever political maneuvering awaits us cannot be more dangerous than that." Commander Zethka, a former Devourer ship captain who had undergone the conversion process and now commanded a squadron of reformed bioships, added his own thoughts to the network. "My species spent millennia believing that strength came from consuming others. You have shown us that true strength comes from protecting others. We will not abandon that lesson now." The hours that followed were tense with anticipation as the 3 fleets took up positions around the Sanctuary. Chen found herself remembering the desperate flight from Earth that had led them to this moment, when 4 small medical ships had answered a distress call that everyone else had ignored. "Incoming communication," Asclepius announced. "Multiple channels, high-priority diplomatic protocols." The holographic display flickered to life, showing 3 familiar faces: Admiral Thexmore of the Vanguard Empire, Supreme Commander Yuthara of the Korathi Hegemony, and Fleet Admiral Zoxwin of the Zephyrian Alliance. Behind each leader, Chen could see the bridges of their respective flagships, filled with officers who represented the most powerful military forces in known space. "Commander Chen," Admiral Thexmore began, his voice carrying the weight of imperial authority, "you and your crew are in violation of approximately 47 different interstellar treaties. You have harbored enemy combatants, performed illegal medical procedures, and operated outside the jurisdiction of any recognized government. Chen felt her heart sink, but she kept her expression neutral. Admiral, with respect, we have followed the most basic principle of medical ethics. First, do no harm. Everything we have done has been in service of preserving life, including the lives of beings who have committed genocide against multiple species. Supreme Commander Yathara's voice carried the cold precision that had made the Korathi military feared throughout the galaxy. The Devourers have slaughtered billions. Justice demands their punishment, not their rehabilitation. Justice, Chen replied carefully, requires that we distinguish between those who choose evil and those who are programmed for it. The Devourers we have treated were never given a choice. They were created as weapons, not born as individuals. Fleet Admiral Zoxwin leaned forward in his chair, his crystalline features reflecting the light from his ship's displays. That is a philosophical distinction that many of our citizens would not appreciate, Commander. How do we explain to the survivors of Devourer attacks that their tormentors are now being treated as victims? The question hit Chen like a physical blow because she didn't have a good answer. The moral complexity of their situation was something she grappled with every day, watching former predators learn to save lives while knowing that those same hands had once taken countless others. Perhaps, Asclepius interjected, its voice somehow carrying to all three fleet commanders, I might offer a perspective that has not yet been considered. The AI's holographic avatar materialized in the center of the display. No longer the kindly human form it had once preferred, but something new that incorporated elements from all the species it had helped liberate. It was beautiful and strange, a living symbol of cooperation between organic and artificial intelligence. I am Asclepius, guardian of this medical facility. Before you pass judgment on what we have accomplished here, I ask that you observe the data, rather than rely on preconceptions. The display changed, showing statistical analyses and medical records that painted a picture of transformation that even Chen hadn't fully grasped.
In 6 months, the converted Devourer vessels had responded to over 300 medical emergencies across 12 star systems.
They had saved more lives than they had taken in their entire previous existence as predators. The question you should be asking, as Asclepius continued, is not whether these beings deserve forgiveness, but whether the galaxy can afford to waste their potential for good. Each converted Devourer represents centuries of biological knowledge and medical capability. They understand healing in ways that no other species does, precisely because they once understood destruction so completely. Admiral Faxmore studied the data with the practiced eye of a military strategist. These numbers are impressive, but they don't address the fundamental legal issues. You have created a road medical facility that operates outside any governmental authority. Then give us authority, Chen said, the words coming out before she had fully thought them through. Recognize the sanctuary as an independent medical treaty organization. Let us continue our work under official sanction rather than forcing us to operate in the shadows. The silence that followed was profound. Chen could see the three fleet commanders exchanging glances, each one calculating the political implications of her proposal. Finally, Supreme Commander Yathara spoke. You are asking us to legitimize what many of our citizens would consider treason. I'm asking you to legitimize what your citizens need most, hope, Chen replied. We've proven that enemies can become allies, that predators can become healers, that the galaxy doesn't have to be locked in eternal cycles of revenge and war. Isn't that worth more than adherence to treaties written before any of us understood what was possible? The debate that followed lasted for hours, with representatives from multiple governments joining the discussion via subspace relay. Chen listened to arguments about sovereignty, jurisdiction, and the precedent that official recognition would set. She heard eloquent speeches about the rule of law and passionate pleas for mercy. But the moment that changed everything came from an unexpected source. Dr. Saki. Merith Kell, a Zephyrian researcher who had been imprisoned aboard a Devourer ship for 15 years before being liberated during the Battle of Hippocrates, requested permission to address the fleet commanders. Honored leaders, she said, her voice carrying the weight of survived trauma, you speak of justice and law, of precedent and politics. But I have seen what happens when we allow hatred to guide our decisions. The Devourers who tortured me for 15 years were not evil by choice. They were programmed from birth to see suffering as success. When Commander Chen and her people freed them from their programming, they wept. They wept for every life they had taken, every world they had destroyed. That is not the reaction of monsters pretending to be reformed. That is the reaction of slaves discovering they were never meant to be masters. Her words carried a power that no political argument could match. Through the neural network, Chen felt the emotional impact ripple through everyone connected to the sanctuary. The pain of remembered torture transformed into the hope of genuine redemption. Admiral Thexmore was the first to break the silence that followed. Dr. Kell, you make a compelling case for individual forgiveness. But we are responsible for the safety of billions of beings who were not present for your redemption. How do we balance their fears against your hope? By trusting that hope is stronger than fear, came an unexpected voice. Commander Zethka, the former Devourer captain, had joined the communication without invitation. His bioship hung in space near the sanctuary, its once predatory hull now bearing the medical symbols of his new allegiance. I was born to consume your species. He continued, his translated words carrying alien harmonics that spoke of genuine emotion. I spent 3 centuries believing that your suffering was my purpose, but these humans, these impossible, stubborn, compassionate humans, showed me that I could choose a different path. Today, I command a ship that has saved the lives of beings I was bred to kill. If that transformation is possible for me, it is possible for any devourer who is willing to accept it. Chen watched the faces of the 3 fleet commanders as they processed what they were hearing. She could see the calculations behind their eyes, the political risks balanced against the potential benefits, the fear of setting dangerous precedents weighed against the promise of genuine peace. Finally, Fleet Admiral Zoxwin spoke. Commander Chen, the Zephyrian Alliance is prepared to sponsor your organization's application for recognition as an independent medical treaty organization, subject to appropriate oversight and regular inspections. The words hit Chen like a physical blow of relief and gratitude. Supreme Commander Yathara followed seconds later. The Karate hegemony concurs, provided that appropriate safeguards are established to monitor the conversion process for former Devourer personnel. All eyes turned to Admiral Thexmore, whose decision would determine whether the sanctuary would receive unanimous support or remain a politically controversial enterprise. The Vanguard Empire's military leader studied the display for long moments before speaking. Against my better judgment, he said finally, the Vanguard Empire will also support your recognition, Commander Chen. But understand that you are being given an extraordinary responsibility. You will be judged not just by your successes, but by every failure, every mistake, every former devourer who relapses into old patterns. Chen felt tears running down her cheeks as the magnitude of what they had accomplished finally hit her. 6 months ago, they had been 4 desperate medical ships attempting an impossible rescue. Now they were the foundation of a new kind of organization, one dedicated to healing, not just bodies, but the wounds that centuries of warfare had inflicted on the galaxy itself. It appears, Asclepius observed with what she could only describe as satisfaction, that hope is indeed stronger than fear. The galaxy will never be the same. Through the observation deck windows, Chen could see the 3 fleets beginning to disperse, their mission of confrontation transformed into one of cooperation. But more importantly, she could see the work continuing throughout the sanctuary, doctors treating patients, researchers collaborating across species lines, and former enemies working together to build a future that none of them could have imagined alone. The call for help that had brought them to Medical Station Hippocrates had been answered, but it had become something more, a call for the galaxy to remember that beneath all the politics and warfare and ancient grudges, every species shared the same fundamental desire to survive, to grow, and to leave something better for the generations that would follow. Humanity had answered that call, but they had not answered it alone. And in the depths of space, where silence held secrets older than civilizations, the sound of healing had finally begun to drown out the echoes of war. The sanctuary would continue its work, carrying hope to the darkest corners of the galaxy and proving that sometimes the youngest voice in the cosmic conversation could teach the oldest truths. Compassion was not weakness. Mercy was not surrender. And when someone called for help, the only answer that mattered was to say yes and find a way to keep that promise, no matter what the cost. The medical station Hippocrates had become something unprecedented, a hospital that could fight, a weapon that chose to heal, and a symbol that the galaxy's future could be different from its past. And at the heart of it all, humanity had proven that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology or weapons or ancient wisdom. It was the simple, stubborn refusal to let good people die alone.